Sting me.
Welcome back, gamers, to another turn-by-turn video. My turn-by-turn videos are where I walk you through a board game, turn at a time, through the eyes of one or two or more players to give you a really good idea of how a game plays, show you the basic mechanics, to so help you get an idea whether or not you like the game. Today's game, we're going to be looking at Kingsburg. Kingsburg is a 2 to 5 player game. It's a fantasy flight game, and it plays in about 90 minutes typically. We won't be doing the full 90 minutes today. The game spans 5 years. I'm just going to take you through one of those years. Within each year, there are 8 phases. And I think year 1, that will give you enough turns to see how the game plays, if the game is right for you. I think it's a great game. I think new players can jump into this game pretty easily. There's not a lot of intense rules or complex things to really learn, so I think it's great for new players because they can kind of jump in and get going right away. I think experienced gamers will have fun with this because there's enough chance and strategy, and there's enough aspects in the game that will keep experienced gamers occupied. Kingsburg is a dice rolling worker placement game. It does have resource management. It does have what I call light city building aspects to it. So if there's anything in there that you like, then Kingsburg is probably going to be a good game for you. In Kingsburg, you take on the role of a newly appointed or newly elected governor for King Tritus. King Tritus is the ruler of all the lands of Kingsburg, and it's going to be your job to take care of a newly acquired territory that the king has come into. Each player will be doing the same thing, and at the end of the game, at the end of the 5th year, the player with the most victory points, they win the game. And that player will be acquiring victory points by building up their province with buildings, influencing the king's advisors, winning battles at the end of each year. So that player will have successfully defended and successfully built up their province the best because they will have the most victory points, and that player is the winner. So with that, let's jump into Kingsburg and see how it plays. All right, you can see we already have the game kind of set up here. I got all the components out already. I'm going to play this as both players. I'm going to play the yellow player and the green player. This is just going to be a turn-by-turn look at the game. If you want to see the complete setup and overview, watch our Set It Up Kingsburg video. That will take you through all the components and the setup and the mechanics of the game in greater detail. But for this, we're just going to play some turns so you can see how the game kind of flows. Just to give you a good idea of the play style and the playthrough of the game. To start off, each player would take their player tokens and place them on the 0 score track, the 0 soldier chart, and then just place them in any order for now on the turn order chart, because that will change here when we get to the phase of the game that actually determines the play order. With that, the game would start in year 1. The game spans 5 full years, but for this, I'm going to take you through year 1 and those 8 phases within year 1. I think that'll be enough turns just to really give you a good idea of how the game plays, without going through all 5 years and then putting you to sleep, when you could be doing better things than watching me kind of repeat myself all the way through all 5 years. The game doesn't change a whole lot as you get through year 4 and 5, other than the difficulty of the battles increases. So as the armies are attacking, the difficulty of those armies increasingly gets harder as you progress through 1 through 5, with 5 being the hardest. So with that, let's start off with phase 1 of year 1. Phase 1 is the King's Aid phase, and typically that phase would be the player with the least number of buildings would pick up an additional player dice. But since this is the first phase of the first year, instead, all players have no buildings, and then all players then would receive 1 supply from the supply good of their choice. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up a gold for the green player and a gold for the yellow player. And that would conclude phase 1 of year 1. That phase moves pretty quick, and then we move into the second phase of the game, which is our first productive season phase. This is the spring season, and in the productive seasons, this is where the action is really going to take place. This is where we get to roll dice and influence advisors and construct buildings and all that goodness. So first thing we do is both players are going to roll their dice. I'll roll for green, and then I'll roll for yellow. There is no turn order when you roll the dice, but for me, I'm just going to roll them separately. But players would roll at the same time. The first productive season, spring, actually each productive season has 4 parts to it. And the first part is turn order, second part, influence advisors, third part, receive help from those advisors, and then the fourth part is construct buildings. So we're in the first part of turn order, and what we do here is we look at the 2 rolls that the players rolled and to see who rolled the lowest score. So player yellow has 6 and 4, 14. Green player has 9, 10. So green player is the first player for this round since they rolled the lowest. So we don't have to change anything on the turn order since that's how we already have it set up. So now green would be the first player to influence the advisors. So they have 6, 3, and 1. And you can use your dice in any way, shape, or form you want. You can split them up and use them 3 individually, all 3 at once, 2 and 1. You get a pick. The only thing you have to keep in mind is each advisor can only be influenced once by 1 player during the round, and the numbers on your dice have to match exactly the number of the advisor that you're going to influence. You can't have any, if you roll a 9, you can't influence 8, 7, or 6 because you have at least 9. No, you have to influence the 9 on the 9. It has to be exact. So as player, or the green player, I have 6 and 3. I'm going to go for the 9 advisor, and then play would then go to the yellow player because each player can only advise or influence 1 advisor at a time. So now the yellow player is going to go, and they're actually going to go to the 6 advisor. They're going to use their yellow 6th die and go to the 6 advisor. Play then goes back to the green player. They have a 1, so they're going. The only thing they can do is advise the advisor in the in the 1 position. And then going back to the yellow player, they have the 2 yellow dice. They have 2 4s. And if they were to use that on the 4, then they would lose their last die, so they're not going to do that. They're going to go ahead and advise the 8 advisor. And that kind of wraps up the influencing the advisors. Now we do the receive help from the advisors. So we start with the highest number advisor, which is the greens 9. So the green player will pick up their dice, and they get to choose between gold and wood or stone and wood. And for this, the green player is going to pick up the gold and stone. Now it's the yellow player's turn, and they're going to pick up their dice, and they get the resources from their advisor, which is 2 gold. Play then continues down the advisors from greatest to smallest, and it's against the yellow player, and they get to change in 1 of theirs, so they'll change in a gold for a stone and a wood. And then the player green goes because that's the last die on the board, and they simply get 1 victory point for influencing the advisor with the 1. So they get 1 victory point. The next phase of the game, or the next part to this phase, is constructing buildings. Now each player has an opportunity to build 1 building during the productive phase. So the green player is going to spend 2 gold, and they're going to build the statue. The statue has a cost of 2 gold. They get 3 victory points, so we move the green player to 4 on the score chart. And the statue says at the beginning of each at the beginning of each productive season, if you have rolled the same number on all your dice, you may re-roll 1 of them. So if you roll triples, then you can re-roll 1 of those dice if you choose to. So now play would go back to the yellow player, and the yellow player can then decide if they're going to build a building, and they are. And for this, they're going to build the inn, which costs 1 gold and 1 wood, and they would return those supply tokens back to the reserve. And the inn gains no victory points, but at the end of summer each year, they receive a +2 token. So at the end of the summer season, they get a +2 token. That would conclude the second phase of the game, and we would now move towards the third phase of the game, which is the king's reward. Now the king is going to reward the player that's been doing the best within their province. And the first thing you do is to determine who is the player with the most buildings. You look at all the players. For this case, both player yellow and player green Both have one building. So then you move to resources. Green player has one, yellow player has two, so therefore the yellow player has been doing the best, so the yellow player will actually receive a bonus victory point. And that ends phase 3. The phases move pretty quick. The productive seasons take a little bit longer just because there's more actions within that phase, but so far, moving along very nicely. Now we're in the summer productive season, and we do the same thing as we did in the spring. Both players are going to roll their dice. And then we just see who has the lowest roll. Green, again, has the low roll this time with 6, 7, 8, 9. And the yellow player has 11 and 5 being 16. So yellow player is going to go last again, so we don't move anything on the turn order chart. And now the green player is again going to look and see what which advisor that they want to influence. So they got 6, 7. They're actually going to go 6, 8 again and influence the same guy they did last time. Yellow is going to look at theirs, and they have 15. They're going to go all the way to the top. They're going to use all 3 dice, and they're going to influence this one advisor. So play goes back to green. Single again, so we're going to go back to this advisor that has the 1. And that concludes the influencing of advisors. Now we receive the help from the advisors, starting with yellow because you start at the highest number, which is 15. So yellow picks up their dice, and they get 1 gold, 1 wood, and 1 stone from the supply. Go to green now. Green gets 2 gold for this from the supply. And then since the green's the only one left, they pick up their last remaining die, and they get 1 bonus victory point for that advisor, so they move to 5 on the victory points. Now we construct buildings again, starting with player green. And this time the player green is actually going to sit tight and not build any buildings because they're going to save up some of the resources for later use to build something that's a little bit, a little bit more, takes a little bit more resources. Yellow player on the other hand, they might be building something here. One thing to mention though is that you have to build in the leftmost column of your province sheet before you can move on to the right hand column. So you have to build things in column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4 in that order, but you can do that within any row on the province sheet. There's 5 rows and you can build any one of those, but you have to move left to right. And player yellow is actually going to build a guard tower, which costs 1 gold and 1 stone. So they place that token on their guard tower. And the guard tower gives them 1 victory point, so they move ahead to 2 on the victory point scorecard or score track. And the guard tower is going to give them +1 in battle, so that'll be very helpful when the winter phase happens. So that concludes the phase 4. At the end of phase 4 is the summer season. So player yellow actually will be receiving a +2 token since they have the inn built. So we move to phase 5, which is the King's Envoy. And the King's Envoy is one of those mechanisms that actually helps players kind of move ahead that are kind of maybe lagging behind a little bit. So this is a nice thing for new players that are not too experienced with these types of games. It kind of gives them a little bit of extra help as the game progresses, or just a player that's not getting good rolls. You might be getting horrible rolls, and you need the King's Envoy. So the King's Envoy goes to the player with the least number of buildings. So in this case, it's the green player. So the green player will pick this King's Envoy up. And the King's Envoy, what that's going to allow you to do, that's going to allow you to influence an advisor that's already been influenced, or you get to build 2 buildings during your turn instead of 1. So that would end phase 5. We move to phase 6. Phase 6 is again it's the last productive season of the year. So this is the fall season. So both players again are going to roll their dice to determine turn order. Yellow rolls 7 and green rolls 7. So in this case, when there's a tie like this, turn order does not change. Turn order stays the same. So green again is the first player. So now we've determined turn order. We're going to move into the influence advisors. So we have 6, 7. And this time the green player is going to put 2 of their 3s on the 6. They're going to influence the 6 advisor. Yellow player is just going to simply put their 4 die on the 4 advisor. Green comes back to green. Green's again back on the number 1 spot. And then yellow player is going to use both their die and put it on the 3 spot. So now we have receive help from the advisors. So we start with the highest again. This time it's green. Green can then, they're going to exchange 1 wood in and get a gold and a stone for their advisor. Yellow gets to pick their choice of gold or wood, and they are going to pick gold for their resource. Yellow goes again. Since they're on the 3, they also pick up a wood for that advisor, and then green picks up their last remaining die, which again gives them that bonus victory point as they move forward. Next, players are going to do construct buildings again, starting with the green player. The green player has 3 gold and 1 stone, which they're going to turn in, and they're going to build the chapel. And the chapel gives them 5 victory points. So they go ahead and move forward to 11 on the victory point chart. And the chapel says at the beginning of each productive season, if the total of your dice is 7 or less, you may re-roll all of them. So that kind of helps you if you're having pitiful rolls, you just can't seem to get luck to be on your side, and you roll 7, just like we did this turn, you can re-roll those all again and hopefully get a higher roll. We can now go to yellow to see if they're going to construct any buildings, and they are. They're going to go ahead and construct the market, which costs 2 gold and 2 wood. Put that on their province sheet. And the market's going to give them 1 victory point. And it says, once per season, you may influence an advisor whose value is 1 point higher or lower than the sum of the dice you are using. So this is going to give you a little bit of an advantage to move your dice up 1 or down 1 to try to get the advisor that maybe you wanted, but you just didn't quite get the roll. So that's going to be very helpful in terms of generating resources. That's going to end the last productive season. That's phase 6. That's the fall season. So now we're going to move into the 7th phase of the game, which is recruit soldiers. Now you have the opportunity to build up your military strength before we get into the 8th and final phase of the year, which is the battle. This phase simply allows players to try to gain soldiers if they can. To do so, you must turn in 2 goods to gain 1 soldier. So we looked at green player. We have no resources, so we cannot buy any soldiers or recruit any soldiers. And then we go to yellow, same thing with them. They only have the 1 resource, which isn't enough to pay the cost to recruit 1 additional soldier. So both players do not get any additional help in soldiers for this turn or for this phase. So now the play goes to phase 8, the winter season, which is the battle. And when you move the token over to phase 8, what you'll do is you'll first turn over the top card on the enemy deck to reveal the enemy that's going to be attacking each player's province. And it has a strength number in the top left-hand corner of the card. You see the penalty for losing against the goblin card, which is what's drawn here, in the red zone, which is -1 gold and -1 building. And then in the blue area shows you the what you get if you beat the army, which is +1 stone. So the next thing you do as you do the winter season, the battle season, you do roll 1 white player dice, and that is going to be, and I just rolled very pitifully, that is going to be what the king is sending as reinforcements. So the king knows that his new provinces are being attacked, and he's going to send some of his own military to help us out. In this case, he's not going to help us much because he only sent 1. So each player on the soldier chart would then move up +1 on the soldier chart. So both the yellow and the green player are moving up to the 1 position. Since neither player really did anything to try to strengthen their army during the course of the year, it's not going to look good for this battle. The next thing you want to do is each player wants to look at their province sheet and see if they get any help from their buildings from defenses. The green player does not. The yellow player, however, has built the guard tower, which is going to give them +1 in battle. So they actually will have a 2 this round for their military strength. So now we have to resolve battle. Resolve battle is simply you take the strength of the card number, the strength of the enemy, which is that top left number, which is the 3 for the goblins, and compare that to the number in the soldier chart for each player. So 3 versus the yellow 2, and then 3 versus the green 1. Both players are going to get defeated in this battle because both players did not prepare well for this battle. So both players would lose 1 gold if they had it. We do not, so we don't lose that. But then each player has to lose 1 building they've constructed. So for the green player, he's going to lose his chapel, which then means he has to remove the 5 victory points that he already had. So we move back to 6 on the victory point score track. And then the yellow player is going to lose their market. And the reason they lose their market is because you have to lose the building that's the furthest right. If you have multiple buildings in the same column that are furthest right, you can pick which one of those you want to lose. But since we only have 1 in the second column, we have to lose that one. So losing the market takes the yellow player back 1 victory point. And then that would normally conclude the battle phase. If a player had beat the goblins, then that player or other players would then compare the total number of soldiers plus their total number of buildings and combine those 2 numbers together to give them their battle score, I guess. And then those 2 players, whoever had the highest, that player would receive a bonus victory point. So for instance, in this game being just a 2-player game, if one of us had beat the goblins, then that player would have also received a victory point and would have not lost any buildings. So it really helps to have your military kind of beefed up a little bit because that pitiful reinforcement roll didn't do much for us. And that kind of ends year 1. That's how 1 year plays in Kingsburg. The next thing you would do is you would move the year track down to 2, take the calendar token and put it back to phase 1. Each player would then go back to 0 on the soldier chart. You do not get to keep the soldiers that you had from year 1 to year 2. Every year the soldiers reset back to 0 so that you have to plan again to know how many soldiers am I going to need to keep fighting off these enemies. And like I said, as you go through year 2, 3, 4, and 5, it gets increasingly difficult. So you want to make sure you're planning ahead for that. I think that kind of shows you gives you a good look at how the game plays without going through the entire game. I think that's enough turns to really show you how it plays. It plays pretty much the same way as you go through it. Not a lot of changes. If you had more players, obviously the phases would take longer because there's more dice rolling, there's more dice being thrown out on the advisors area, and there's a lot more strategy that's being thought through. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of Kingsburg. I think this is a really fun game. I think new players will enjoy it. I think experienced players will enjoy it. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to be making more of these types of videos for different games. If there's a game you'd like to see gone through turn by turn or set up or unboxed or anything, or if you have any questions, let us know in the comments box below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.